The second kind of poisonous conversation about Islam is when people are judgmental. They want to judge you more than Allah will judge you. They let people know they're going to go burn in hellfire, or this is haram, and you don't even know the discussion of the fuqaha. You know nothing, but you think it's haram, so you want to put your fatwa on the world. What qualifications do you have, homeboy? Where did you get this from? I want to tell you a fun conversation I had. One of my friends, Sheikh Abdul Nasir, some of you know him. Sheikh Abdul Nasir and I were at a dinner. And there were some people having dinner with us, and one brother had a very short beard. He had a very short beard. And the brother next to him had a long beard. And the brother with the short beard, at dinner, turned to the guy with the long beard and said, "Akhi, your face, haram. You have to..." And he's embarrassing this guy at a dinner table. And you know, when it comes to matters of fiqh, I don't open my mouth because I'm not a faqih. I'm not even a scholar. But Sheikh Abdul Nasir is actually a faqih. And he's sitting there listening to this guy. By the way, both of them are like 20 years old. Akhi, this is haram. In the hadith it says you have to grow your beard, etc., etc. And Sheikh Abdul Nasir, oh man, sometimes this guy, he's about to eat his barbecue, and he puts the thing down and he goes, "Brother, where's the hadith?" And he goes, "I think it's in Bukhari." I was like, "Yeah, which bab? Who's the rawi? Who narrated it? Who did he narrate it to? How was it understood by the Sahaba? How was it understood by the first generation? How was it understood by Imam Bukhari himself? What's the commentary on this hadith in Fathul Bari? What about the Maliki school? What did they comment about this hadith? What about the Shafi'i school? What did they comment about this?" And the brother said, "You're embarrassing me. Please don't embarrass me." And he said, "Yes, I'm embarrassing you because you're embarrassing him. You don't know, but you like to take things and just either make them halal or make them haram. You don't have the qualifications." There is a lot of conversation that goes into, before you say Allah forbade something, you have to be very careful. There's not a small thing. Tilka hududullah. This is the hudud of Allah. You don't just get to drop haram, haram. You don't get to do that. And you don't get to decide who's going to burn in hellfire and who's guided and who's misguided. The ayah that I'm reading to you today, towards the end, when we get to the end of the ayah, "Inna rabbaka huwa a'lam biman dhalla an sabilih." Your Rabb, He knows who's misguided, not you. You don't get to decide that. But we love to judge people very quickly. As a matter of fact, we are so good at judging people, we judge people as soon as they walk into the masjid. We look at them, "Oh, short beard." We look at check the pants. "Oh, yeah." So quick. We send people to nar. Most people we send to nar. This is a horrible, horrible thing to do. Horrible thing to do. Judging people through Islam. The only one to judge is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our job is not to judge. Our position is not to judge. Then the third, and by the way, when somebody does something wrong, if you know it's absolutely wrong, you've done your research, you've done your homework, you know for sure that it's wrong, then you have to figure out a polite way of correcting it. And maybe you shouldn't be the one correcting it. Maybe somebody else should be the one correcting it. You have to use what? Wisdom. Wisdom. Sometimes you correcting someone will do more damage than good. If I try to correct my father, it's not going to go well. It's not a good idea. I should talk to my mom, and my mom will talk to my dad, and that way I won't get in trouble. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to use wisdom, and you don't take the direct approach every time. It'll do more damage than good. So the first kind of poisonous conversation is divisive. It creates divisions and talks about groups and people. The second kind of poisonous conversation is obsessed with judging people. The third kind of conversation, I kind of already alluded to it, is conversations about the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that are shallow, that are absolutely shallow. What do I mean? You know, if you hear a khutbah in which there are 30 ayat are quoted, 20 ahadith are quoted, ayah after ayah after ayah, hadith after hadith after hadith. How much time did you spend on each ayah? A few seconds, yes? And then you went straight to the next ayah. Then you went to the next ayah. Then you went to the next hadith. Then you went to the next ayah. How much time did you actually think about any one of those ayat? Very little. Very little. And you know what that is? That is not healthy. Every ayah of the Quran, every hadith of the Prophet ﷺ deserves attention. When you give me too much of that at the same time, I actually end up paying attention to none of it. To none of it. Allah complains in the Quran, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ not لِيَسْتَدِلُّوا بِآيَاتِهِ. He says لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ, so they can think deeply about His ayat. Hour and a half I plan to talk to you tonight. About how many ayat? About how many ayat? Do you know? One ayah. Because it deserves attention. We need to think about it. So what happens is people will quote lots of ayat, but they won't go in depth in any one of them. Now when you don't understand something in depth, is there a chance that you're misunderstanding it? Absolutely. When you don't understand something in depth, there is a lot of room for misunderstanding. Because a shallow understanding can be very easily a problematic understanding. Let me tell you something else while I'm on this point. This might be a little bit harder to understand, but an important point. The most supreme thing that we have in Islam, the highest truth that we have in Islam is the Book of Allah. يقول سبحانه وتعالى وَكَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلْيَا. The word of Allah is in the highest place. The highest thing we have is what again? The word of Allah. Now what happens? Somebody says, they have a bias already. They have a thing in their mind. And the concept in their mind is women are inferior to men. This is the idea they have in their head. Now that they have this idea in their head, they will pull a bunch of ayat and they'll pull a bunch of hadith and they'll give you dalil for why women are inferior to men. But what came first? The ayat came first or their concept came first? Their concept came first and they used the ayat to prove their concept. This is incorrect. We don't want to make any assumptions before we turn to the Book of Allah. The Book of Allah will decide how we should think. We don't decide how to think about the Book of Allah. You understand? So there's this bias. You already have your mind made up. And by the way, this can go really crazy. Some people can say, well, we have to kill every non-Muslim. Let me prove it to you. And they'll give you 100 hadith and 50 ayat. And they can do it. It's very easy. I've seen it done. What's the problem with that? And some young 19-year-old listens to that speech and says, man, he's got so much dalil. He quoted so many ayat and so many hadith. He must be right. Because it's in the Book of Allah. No, you monkey. The conclusion came first and the research came second. In every field of knowledge, what comes first? The conclusion or the research? The research comes first, and then based on the research, you decide a conclusion. This is the exact opposite of what they do. So it sounds like a very Islamic lecture, because it's got a lot of ayat and a lot of hadith. But you know what? It's a very un-Islamic approach. Because their bias, their opinion, has already taken a supreme position, and everything else is being inserted inside it. SubhanAllah. And we Muslims get taken advantage of. They think that's from Islam too. So many of the things we hear today, unfortunately, so many of the things we hear in the name of the Book of Allah are an insult to the Book of Allah. They're an insult. The exact opposite of the meaning is being taught. So many times. And it's a painful thing to listen to. Wallahi, it's painful.